Good morning, or afternoon, whatever the heck it is, everybody. We'll let everybody get logged in here, and I'll make my name right. Fix me. Let's see. Rename.
I don't have video.
You don't.
That's
Can't hear your voice.
Yeah.
We can hear your lovely voice, Bob, but we can't see your crackly face. Anyway, as we're getting started, we just have a couple people online with us so far. And any questions from the last few meetings we've had? No? That's always easy. None? Well, we should have Jeff Smith joining us here in a second. And Bob, you'll figure out if you have a camera, and we'll get rolling.
Yes, sir. I'm going to boot out and come back in. Everything seems to be says it's okay on my end. I'll try coming back in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get started, and I'll start with a little bit of a recap on some things that we have talked about already, as my system overrode itself for a second here. Okay, so you know, in the what have we done now? I think we're supposed to do a total of 6, and we're probably at 6. We may go ahead and do another one next week, but one is to get through the understanding of how to focus on student retention over the summer. And what I always think in terms of is 2 things. Is first, an awful lot of distractions and people going away to not coming back have to do with not clearly articulating goals, having really strong goals, having a clear, defined process for when their next testing is. And I see a lot of schools, you know, maybe they're in the MMA, Muay Thai, fitness, kickboxing, BJJ realm, who either have testing cycles that are so long or don't have regular testing cycles, and that gives you no help with your retention. What you want is you want to have a short enough testing cycle, and depending upon your belt rank structure, it doesn't have to be, you know, a major new belt. It can be a stripe, it can be a progress check, whatever. But you want at the very least, you know, a 60 to 90 day window where you're keeping them on track for twice a week, where you can sit down and have the conversation of your next testing is mid-August. I wanted to go through this summer, see when you're going to be out of town, when you're going to be available, what trips you have, and then how we keep on track so you don't get off cycle. And, you know, and sometimes you'll have a testing on the week when they're out of town, so you can do a makeup test ahead of time or a makeup test ahead of behind that. But the more you do to keep them on track, have them not fall behind, have them stay tight with their peer group, the better off you're going to be on that. The second element of retention, especially with kids, but with adults as well, is it is a time to loosen up a little bit, have a lot of fun activities, create special events and special opportunities for them over the summer, so that you have it very highly engaging, and there's special things that they're looking forward to. And again, true with kids, true with adults, but either way, you know, have something for them to look forward to every week besides just coming to class twice a week and working out. So the more of that you do, the better. We spent a couple of the earlier conversations talking about summer camps, and I think there's a big difference between a summer camp that's designed to be babysitting over the summer versus a summer camp that's designed for predominantly your students. Master Smith called it a rank advancement camp. I really like doing stuff like that. I really like having a special 1 week retreat or a special multi-day retreat or something that's useful and fun for the students. On the on the other side of it, the long where you're doing watching them all day, 7 to 5 or 10 to 3 or whatever. You really have to be careful. One, that you don't do that unless you're really going to fill it up. I mean, if you have 40 kids paying $400 or $500 a week for it, great. If you have 5 kids paying $150 a week, I mean, there's no better way to burn yourself out and just run yourself into the ground than something unproductive like that. The second element is you always want to make sure you have a different staff. So you don't want the same staff running the school in the evening and being there all day. What will happen is the numbers, a lot of people will have a crappy summer, not because summer needs to be slow, but because their staff is so distracted that they end up not doing much in the school. So you don't want to burn your staff out before back to school. And the second thing you want to be careful of is to not have the numbers at the school go down, mostly because the staff is distracted doing something else. It's very easy, by the way, when you're going to do if you're going to do a big full summer camp, to line up and have full-time external staff. Or, I mean, I always had, kids coming back from college who were 3rd, 4th degree black belts who wanted a summer job, and it's the type of thing that I could do to accommodate them. There's also teachers who are off for the summer who are welcome to do it. One of the most successful regular martial arts schools that ran a summer camp that I had seen, I mean, they did an extra $250,000 net over the summer. But what it was is he would hire a woman who was a full-time school teacher and administrator, had a master's degree in education administration, was worked with the public school system the rest of the year. He hired her and she ran it for him all summer, hired other people and so forth. And so that was very productive, very successful, and it kept the main school from having any difficulties. Matt Smith, anything to add? I see you've been getting organized there a little bit. Anything to add to that recap of our first session a little bit as we move forward here?
Yeah, I think if you're going to do the summer camp thing, make sure that you decide how many weeks you're going to do. And the way we always offset it so the parents kind of got on board with it, and they didn't think that we were watering down their curriculum. Our normal testing cycle is 16 classes, so every 2 months. So what we did was kind of like make our summer camp like a summer school. So if they went to camp for 2 weeks, we did classes. We didn't want them to do class all day from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. So we did just 2 hours of training. And then 5 days is 10 lessons, and 2 weeks would be 20. So it's even more than a normal testing cycle. So we had a separate curriculum that we were doing for the summer that they were testing on, and they had to test on it and pass it to be able to advance to that next rank. But we wouldn't give them their rank there. We would give it at the normal graduation. They would be getting an extra rank. And as soon as we had one test in the summer and everybody saw people that were getting an extra belt because they went to summer school, then all of a sudden we were inundated with all of these other people wanting to do it because they wanted to be able to jump a belt. And in reality, they were jumping a belt if they went to regular evening classes while they were doing the summer. So they got a double promotion, so to speak, but they still had to pass both tests. Other thing.
And they were making up for time that they may have missed otherwise, right?
Exactly.
So
we had a lot of them that were already planned on going away for the summer for 6 weeks or a period or things like that. Or you had somebody who during the Christmas holiday missed a testing cycle because of holidays or illness or whatever. Some of them want to catch up to another family member who started later. We had a lot of parents that were doing it behind their kids. We had parents come to the summer camp.
Yeah, trying to catch up to the class their kids were in. That we've had a lot of that over the years.
So the idea was just to make it a fun, and each week we had a different theme. You know, we had Beach Week on one of them. We had superhero another week. We had Disney another week. So you make it a big fun, and they do arts and crafts, and that's why we don't use our regular staff. Now, I did use some of my part-time instructors to come in to teach the 2 hours, but I had some of my parents that were helping run the camp that were, just parents that, because it was just like a regular camp. The rest of the time, it's just those 2 hours, it was all karate stuff. So,
Yeah.
And the other thing, Master Oliver, that I think, which attracted a lot of people on the summer that they forget is that, and you addressed it some already, is that it's not how many new enrollments you get each month that's going to determine the growth of your school. It's how many people are leaving each month on top of the ones that are coming in. So in other words, if June of 2017, you have about the same amount of students you have now, that means over the past 12 months, you had as many people coming in as going out. If your enrollment went down, then you had more people going out than coming in. And if your enrollment grew, even though it might have grown at a smaller rate, you had more people coming in than going out. So the idea is to keep track of your retention. What most people, they think they need 15 or 20 new students. Well, in a perfect world, 15 or 20 is great. But if you have 10 or 15 leaving each month, then you're only going to have maybe 5 new students net each month. So that means in a year, you're going to grow by 50 or 60 students. But
well, we've talked to. I mean, don't undersell that. We've talked to schools. I talked to an MMA school in Southern California who thought they were setting the world on fire, and they were enrolling 50 new members a month and staying even. Right.
Yeah, that was the key. Staying
Yeah,
even.
and I talked to another one in Chicago, and they were literally turning over a third of their student body a month. So they had a 33% dropout rate. And the more traditional schools, it seems like have understood this a little bit better, and the more somebody is fitness oriented, as opposed to a solid traditional curriculum. I think the more they tend to give themselves a pass unnecessarily and inappropriately on those numbers. So you've got to be aware and really pay attention to that all the way along the line. But so moving to our next subject here, Master Smith. Now that you and Bob have gotten all the pieces working, Master Smith and I just got off a meeting with our Mile High schools here in Colorado. And one of them did 37 appointments in 2 hours on Friday night. And they're having a very high show rate, by the way. They had 17 first introductory lessons last night. So on Tuesday night, today's Wednesday, my days are running together here after my self-inflicted wound of going to Universal. But then they did another 67 appointments over the weekend from a different event. Now, the 67 was actually, I thought, a kind of light number. That was, they were set up at a movie theater for the Incredibles weekend. And that one, by the way, we were talking about movie releases, kid and adult market, that set all kinds of records. It did 186 million over the weekend. It was, I think, the highest grossing animated film of all time. Yep. It was the first or second highest grossing June release of all time. I mean, it set all kinds of records. And so get those numbers. What was it? 37 at one event, 67 at the other event. The one event was only 2 hours, and what it was is it was a big local, this is Westminster, Colorado, outdoor movie showing festival in a park, right? So it was.
But even Incredibles, it was just some plain movie.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine some family film. I don't even know what it was, but in this case, they had a booth out there for a couple of hours, made a huge number of appointments in 2 hours. They're having a very high show rate. Last night, they said they had a 90% show rate of people who had appointments last night. Now, that is unusual. What we think of in terms of is kind of the minimum expected is if I'm at any kind of live event that 80% or more of the people I talk to will make appointments on the spot. At least half of them will show up. But again, last night they were having a 90% show rate, right? And then of those that show up, at least half will enroll. And we've seen that be as high as 65 to 75% of them enrolling from those show rates. So again, we've been talking about summer isn't slow. They will, in all likelihood, check me on the numbers, Master Smith, 37 plus 67, 90, 104.
Yeah, around 100.
104 appointments. So they'll have, and they're having a better than half show rate, but so they probably won't stay at 90%. But it looks like they'll have maybe 75 intros from that. And I'd be surprised if it's not at least 30 enrollments, if not 35 enrollments in the last half of the month of June. So
that's one weekend.
Yeah, that's one weekend.
And I know schools that can't get 35 enrollments the whole summer. And that's because they don't get off their butt and get out of the school. And they haven't learned how to do a live event where you're actually capturing leads and making appointments. Most people go to a live event and they do a demo and hand out some guest passes and think they had a successful event. And if they do that, they're lucky to get one or two enrollments or a half a dozen people to even come in the school.
Yeah, and you're not going to get me started on that topic again, but we were just having the conversation with them also about demo teams. And, you know, I don't know why martial artists get so wrapped up into that, but, you know, spending hours upon hours on putting together a performance team that goes out and performs publicly, you know, it certainly isn't a useful marketing tool. It's not something that that generates appointments or generates leads. You know, it's just.
And I will clarify. It could, if you had a booth set up there and you had a spin wheel or some way of capturing their lead information and making appointments. But I tell you, 99% of the people that do the demos, they think that they look so great that everybody's just going to flock to the school and want to do their classes.
Well, they do a demo and they hand out flyers and think that's going to do something. But I'll counterpoint you a little bit, Master Smith. They'll have just as much results with the booth, the prize wheel, maybe somebody in costume and a TV than they will with all of that plus the demo team. And if you have a slot at an event where you can do a demo, teach a class, right? Get on the loudspeaker and have everybody come up and teach a big intro. I've done that a bunch of times, and that works well. We used to do a lot of shopping malls, and in Center Court, we'd have a big intro every hour or two, and that worked great. But having a bunch of people kicking vertically and jumping around, breaking boards and all that stuff, that doesn't generate enrollments. That's not what creates the traffic.
I'll clarify that too. That jumping around and breaking boards and all that is not those people that are coming up there that are that you're letting participate. Those were the karate people.
Either one, it's worthless.
I've seen them do board breaking too.
No, I've seen that, and yeah, I mean either one is worthless. But again, let's go back to just the conversation we just had. We had one of our schools did 10 enrollments last week. And the 10 enrollments last week were predominantly from going back through their prospect database, everyone who has been in to take an intro that didn't enroll in the last 12 months, and especially year to date. Everyone who has raised their hand, whether it was they were at a birthday party or they were a lead call from the website, or whether they were somebody that they interacted with a live event, and working through that list. And they frankly haven't even worked the list very well. Mostly it's they put somebody on the phone calling them all, and I think send a couple of emails. To me, working the list would have been 6 pieces of direct mail over 6 weeks, 2 emails a day, send them all a few texts and a few voicemails, and then put a human being on calling them all. But they did 10 enrollments predominantly from, they've got in the last week, predominantly from, they've got a big list of people who they've interacted with that they started following up on. And it's always a shame to have a strong list of past prospects that you give up on. I was just reading Wall Street Journal yesterday, has a whole section on advertising, and advertising in the age of everybody freaking out unnecessarily about data security and all that crap. But the article said very clearly, it was talking about, one of them was talking about retargeting. People who had already raised their hand and had an interest were 3 times more likely to buy than, and 3 times more likely to click an ad than people who hadn't already shown interest. Now that's a 300% improvement because they had shown up at your website already. And it's a good takeaway. And again, I would recommend, if you have it laying around, if you don't find it, going through that Wall Street Journal from yesterday, because what it talked about is the argument of data privacy versus effective advertising. And by the way, what happens online, all the research shows, and I don't care whether you're talking Facebook or Google or whatever, is people are happy when stuff that's relevant to them shows up. And they're unhappy when things that are irrelevant to them show up. So it's, and it's, again, no different than you're watching a TV show. If they, if you're 25 years old in great health and a cancer, not a cancer, a arthritis cream ad shows up, it's just a complete waste of your time to be watching that. On the other hand, if you're 73 years old and a former professional athlete and you have arthritis throughout your body, it's very on target. And the value of online advertising is it can be very on target. So what that does mean is we've got to be aware of the fact that in all business environments, certainly online, the only constant is change. So right now, Facebook's been working really well for us. That wasn't true 2 years ago. My guess is it may not be true 2 years from now, because as you see, the hearings that are scary and all that stuff, what happens is, as soon as you get the politicians involved and as soon as the general public gets freaked out about being targeted in a way that they appreciate and in a way is effective for them, short of somebody coming along with better communication skills than Mark Zuckerberg or Brandon Page, is in all likelihood a lot of that stuff's going to get legislated out of existence, and therefore it'll go to being unproductive advertising media again. But just, that's a little bit of an aside. But Master Smith, what were some other takeaways from, again, we heard one school that did 10 enrollments just from focusing on their prospect database of everybody they already knew was interested, and another school that generated over 100 appointments in just Friday, Saturday, and maybe Sunday. But of those, 37 of them were just from one event. That was a really amazing number. What were some takeaways that everybody can use from that conversation?
Well, the only takeaways you can get from that is do the event.
Yeah, go do something.
You've got to do live. When people say they don't like to do live events, or they don't, it kind of reminds me of birthday parties. I hear people say bad things about birthday parties. I don't do those anymore because we never get any enrollments from that. And when I start talking to them about, well, how did you do the birthday party? And it's the same thing for live events. It's not what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. There's a structure of system. And if any live events you're doing, you don't have a way of capturing their lead information. I talked to one of our members who did a moon bounce, and they have this moon bounce with their school logos and stuff on it. And I told them, you know, they didn't know how to do it because they had never done it for a live event to capture leads. So they said, well, how do you get your leads on a moon bounce? And I said, very simple. You've got 2 people at the front door and you got 2 people at the back door. And nobody goes in until they fill out a release, because you have to have some kind of liability coverage to, you know, to release you from in case they get hurt in there. And when they filled that out, I told them, I said, and if you do a moon bounce, then why not do a prize wheel too? Anybody who goes to the moon bounce gets 2 weeks free. Anybody who spins the wheel can get other prizes like uniform or a t-shirt or a water bottle, you know, any of those kind of little prizes that we give out. And this way we're able to capture their lead information, make the appointments. One of the things that I told them to do to get more appointments on the spot is tell them if they make the appointment today, they get a free uniform when they come. Now, it could be that they won the free uniform on the prize wheel. Then I would tell them you get a free t-shirt. But tell them that it's you know, that most people, 90% are going to say, well, I don't have my schedule. I'll call you. Well, they're never going to call you. So go ahead and just say to them, well, you know, our appointments fill up quickly, so I want to make sure we have a spot for you. So let's just do a tentative one. And then when you get home, if that doesn't fit your schedule, then give me a call and we'll reschedule it for you. Now that works much better. And on that, we'll have about 80% of those people will, after making a tentative appointment, us giving an appointment card will actually have a much better show rate. And we have that same similar system in birthday parties of how we're able to do it. So in other words, a lot of these things that are live events or birthday parties or buddy days, don't think they don't work in the summer. I'm going to tell you, they work 10 times better during the summer. They'll work so well that you'll have more enrollments in the summer. You know, you remember 2 summers ago, we ended up with the 2.5 months of summer with 125 new students enrolled from doing live events. So keep that in mind. Don't use the old expression, oh, the summer's too slow, so I guess we'll just have to, you know, tighten our belt a little bit during the summer. No, summer is the most profitable time to go out and get new students. They're not in school, so where the hell are they? Well, they're out doing things, and you know, make sure that you're engaged and you're being part of these events that are going on. Check your community, see what live events are going on.
Yep.
I have a question.
Well, go ahead, Rudy.
Yeah. What are you doing if you have only 3 to 5 people on the birthday event?
Well, we control our birthday. You know, we do a lot of birthday parties, and we tell them if they're going to have a birthday party, we give our students a free birthday party. But to have a free birthday party, they have to have a minimum of 10 people.
Okay.
Now, if somebody's paying, you know, we have some people that you know, go on our website, or on Groupon, we advertise a special on a birthday party for a certain price. Well, they're paying for that, so whatever they have, they have. But
well, you can still make a minimum, by the way, is you know, having now booked a ton of birthday parties for 2 kids, a lot of them have a minimum of 10, 15, 20 20 kids. So they're not going to slot out the space or the time.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I did, Master Oliver. We had that same thing, but they were paid intros. So we said we prefer a minimum of 10, but they didn't bring them. So what we started doing is scheduling 2 and 3 birthday parties at the same time, because we knew how many they were having ahead of time. So these 3 and 4s, we would put 2 or 3 of those together.
Yeah.
And I've seen other places that do the same thing, not martial arts, but other companies that have, like that Rebounders and some of these other
even Chuck E. Cheese. I mean, they Chuck E. Cheese will have like 20 parties going on at once.
Exactly. And just double them up, make more than one. Now you are going to have a separate staff, and we would take our Wave Masters and divide off the center room. We have 2 classrooms, so we would actually put the smallest group in our little room, and then the big room, if we had 3 of them going at the same time, one would be in the little room. We put the Wave Masters to separate the big classroom, put one on one side, one on the other. Now, if they were about the same age group, we would even let them come together for one of the games and the martial arts games and things that we do where they could play together. If they were different ages, we'd keep them separate the whole time.
Yeah, and not to go too far down that, but what I would say is, I mean, look at other organizations that do birthday parties. And what tends to happen a lot of times is it'll be something where they have an event. So there's one where they do wars with darts. There's another one where Chuck E. Cheese, they're playing arcade games. There's another one where you mentioned rebounders.
Laser tag is what you're talking
about. What's that, Master Smith?
It's called laser tag. I know the one you're talking about.
But there's also one with Nerf guns. It's called Dart Wars. But but they're all the same. Is most of those, what they're doing is there may be 5 parties at once, and the kids all go bounce on the trampolines, or they go, shoot darts at each other, whatever, all at the same time. And then they separate out for a few minutes to do cake and pizza or whatever, then it's done. So it's very easy to run, 5 parties together and then have some place where they all can go do pizza or stagger how that's going to be. But Rudy, the main thing is the promotion ahead of time. We'll always have it be where the mom brings us the list of who's going to be there. We'll mail invitations, send evites out for the invitations, call, for the invitation to call and confirm and so forth, ask them to email and call and so forth. Now, clearly, like if it's my son, he's going to want 10 or 20 invitations just to take to his elementary school class. Some of those kids, we may not have other contact information. But what you try to do is get all the contact information ahead of time, and then you be responsible for promoting it for them, as opposed to just relying on them to promote it, if that makes sense.
Some of the parents are very bad about following up with the parents to confirm that they're coming. They'll just send out their invitations and put on there, please RSVP. And I tell you, these days, that Evite works very well. People are a lot more in tune with going on the online and clicking yes rather than calling or sending back a card. So it's all in how you reconfirm them to find out ahead of time exactly how many you're going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Rudy.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
But anyway, going back to, what we were saying a minute ago, what we're not trying to do is say all marketing is going to be live event marketing. That is the more labor intensive elements of what you can do. But it is a way for a school that doesn't have a big marketing budget to go generate a ton of traffic. And again, go through the numbers. A 2-hour event generated 37 appointments. Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the movie theater generated 67 appointments, over 100 appointments, which will be probably in their case 75 intros, which probably ends up being 30 or 40 enrollments. Worst case, maybe 20, 25. That's well worth it, and it's hard to replace that with just go spend money on advertising and get that kind of volume quickly, right? Now, on the other end of the spectrum, take note of the other example that we just used is 10 enrollments in a week, 10 enrollments in a week, utilizing a resource. Matt Smith, I don't know if I have control or you have control, but Jesse has some background noise there. Jesse Thornton, maybe you can mute yourself, Jesse, because it's not letting me do it for whatever reason. If you have a question, Jesse, speak up. But what I will say on the other thing is almost all of us have a tendency to take a run at somebody, get a yes or no. They come in for an intro, we get an enrollment, we don't get an enrollment, and then forget about them and move on, right? And what you want to do with all of these, let me mute out just for a second.
Jesse, were you able to mute yours?
Hey, Matt Smith,
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to you for 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay. Were you able to get muted there, Jesse?
I tried to. I'm trying to mute on my phone.
Okay. Yeah, just use your mute. If you're on the phone instead of the internet, just use your mute button on your phone. Just like you would mute.
Yes.
Put it on speaker and then mute it. Okay. Okay. Does that answer those questions? Anybody have any follow-up questions? Just unmute yourself to ask a question. And if you're on video, if you just touch that mute button of yours at the top, there's a mute out and back in to get in.
Master Smith, this is Glenn Spence.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Master Oliver was talking about, once you got the
You're fading out there. We lost you. Can you hear him, Bob?
No, sir. Yeah, I think he was referring to what Master Oliver was saying, that Master Oliver was indulging on the follow-up. So even though somebody says no, that's not dead in the water, and then Master Oliver had to go. So you're going to want to follow up with postcards, emails, and phone calls, because it just might not have been the right time. I think that's what he didn't get around to saying.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Did you catch?
Okay, yeah, no. I think what he was saying was that after you get them, you've enrolled them. So we're trying to maintain them or keep them. So I think was the follow-up technique that he was talking about, but he didn't get a chance to express, was maybe like postcards or emails or encouragement things or something like that.
So you're talking about the ones once they enrolled?
Yes.
That's not what Master Oliver said. They didn't enroll. They showed up but didn't enroll.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, if they enroll, then we're going to have an attendance card that we're going to track their retention, retention through making sure they're coming to class twice a week, because they have 2 classes that they have reserved. We actually schedule, on a regular basis. When somebody signs up, we'll pick the 2 days out of the 6 that are best for them. And those are the ones that are going to be their normal classes. And when they don't show up, then we'll pull their attendance card and give them a call, an email, a text message. And that retention, catching them right there when they don't show up for class, think of it as the way a teacher and the school does it in elementary or junior high or high school. If a student doesn't come in for school that day, the parent is getting a call or a text message or an email from the school asking where they are. So that way the parents know ahead of time that they have got to contact that school and let them know that they're not going to be in. And that's what we do for our students. And Master Oliver, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on what you were saying. If they don't show up, you know,
Sorry.
in that intro process, how you were able to contact them.
Well, where I was going with that is what you know, and I mentioned it earlier, is what you know is somebody who's already expressed some level of interest is a much better prospect than just because they live across the street and they have a certain level of income and they have kids in the household or whatever it might be, adult or kid market. But what we have a tendency to do is, it doesn't matter. You were talking about birthday parties earlier, Master Smith. We were talking about live events earlier. Is what we definitely know, if it's a birthday party, it's a buddy event, if they came as a witness for a belt testing, we were out at a movie theater and got their information, is when we're proactively chasing them down like that, is a lot of times we get to them when the timing isn't right to enroll, but the interest is there. Does that make sense? So, you know, if you got to me and Chase last week, we were getting ready to go to Atlanta, then go to Orlando. So it would have been bad timing to start something right then and there. And frankly, the next few weeks might be. But that wouldn't necessarily mean I wasn't interested for him or he wasn't interested. It just meant the timing was bad, right? So what you want to do is realize that once somebody has raised their hand, and that's an opt-in on your website, they attended a birthday party, they, you know, you interacted with them at a movie theater or a fun run or something. They, especially if they came in for an intro and didn't enroll, is in a huge percentage of the time, it's not that they were unimpressed with you or that they just didn't like what you were doing or that they just weren't enthusiastic. A lot of times it's just timing is bad, right? And that's also true of somebody who comes in, goes through your entire process, sits down, and you do an enrollment conference, you ask them to enroll, and they say, well, I can't afford it right now, or we have other things that we're too busy right now, regardless of what it is. See, whether they can afford it or not is often situational. Family had the transmission just blow out in their Audi, and it's a $2,700 repair job. Well, they're right, perhaps. They can't afford it this month, but they can afford it in 2 months when that blows over, or they had extraordinary medical expenses or something. All of those reasons that they had for not coming down now or not enrolling now may be different in 60 days, may be different in 90 days, may be different in 6 months. So what I very rarely see is anybody do a good job with what Thornton, our Smile Like Christ School in Thornton just did, which is go back to their list of everybody who was ever interested and see if they're interested now, right? And what I tell people to do is recognize you can advertise to them continually on Facebook. It's, you know, generally called retargeting. In Facebook, it's creating a custom audience of your current customers, which just means you're uploading an email list or phone number list. You can retarget them on Google. It's just uploading an email list and they go find them. You can email to them. You can text message to them. You can do broadcast voicemail. You can do direct mail. And you can sit down, pick up the phone, and dial through and call them. And different times and different seasonalities, you should do all of those. So for me, it was always one, every event that we do in the school that is designed to generate prospects, designed to generate referrals, I want to make sure that I invite all of our prospect database to it, right? So if we're doing a buddy day or a graduation or a black belt show or women's self-defense day, I don't care what it is, I want to invite everybody that I've ever touched, certainly going back a year or two at least, with postcards, with a letter, with phone calls, with email, with text, and, you know, and all the other digital media. So if you at least have 1 or 2 events a month, that means they're getting invitations to 2 or 3 or more things a month just there, right? You also want to keep just dripping on them and educating them about the value and the quality of what you do. So you want to keep educating them about the values. You want to keep educating them. You want to keep dripping testimonials, parent feedback, student feedback on them. You also want to periodically just go at them very promotionally with an offer. Now, seasonally, June is one of the times, late May and June is one of the times I always win at that list super heavy. So I might mail to them 6 times. I might put somebody on the phone, multiple people on the phone, making sure we called them all, email to them twice a day, etc. Right? The other time would be back to school. Another time might be October. Another time might be January. Another time might be April. We know seasonally you get a big flood if you work it right in January for New Year's. You get a big flood right now for summer. You get a big flood for back to school. Those are at least 3 times that you should really focus on that kind of list. But hardly anybody does it very well.
Those are our biggest. Those 3 are is the ones that make the most impact. But don't forget those other times you said too, because as you said, seasonal things. You know, some people don't have a spring activity or a fall activity or something because a lot of people think martial arts is a seasonal activity. Of course, once they get in our school, we educate them that it's we're going to teach them how to be a year-round activity like regular school.
Yeah, well, those are times when, whether it's an adult or a child, where they're already looking for something to do. They're thinking of, what am I going to do with my son or daughter to keep them, excited, entertained, enthusiastic over the summer? What kind of activities are we going to start for back to school? New Year's, of course, we know, especially in the adult market, is fitness and resolutions and all that stuff. So there are peak times when we know there's a lot of interest and a lot of opportunity there. But that's something that almost nobody does a decent job of. The other thing in that kind of lead follow-up is there's a big difference between a cold lead or prospect and a warm lead. And meaning warm is they just came in for something, they're aware of you, they're still thinking about you, they know who you are. Cold meaning it's just the person who lives across the street, or they came into an event a year and a half ago and you haven't communicated with them since, right? Is their fondness for you, their knowledge of you, their awareness of you, and their enthusiasm for what you do dies quickly. We're in an environment where there's a lot of distractions. There's all these different numbers of how many thousands of marketing messages people see a day and so forth. But what that clearly means is that if you don't stay in front of them, meaning in the mail, plus in their email, plus online, plus calling them periodically, if you don't stay in their awareness level, they forget who you are. And this is true of all businesses. Master Smith and I both like motorcycles. I got to tell you, the Harley dealership that's down the street from me, I must get a mailing twice a week from them. Every time they have some big event, they have cookouts and barbecues and rides and stuff, I get invitations and information about that. But the guy's got my cell phone number, and at least twice a month he's calling me about something or an invitation to something. So it's not just us. You've got to be aware of that level of follow-up is essential in order to have the kind of conversion rates and the kind of results. And it's much more effective, frankly, than be efficient with what you've got than it is to go put more effort into lots of other stuff. What I will say, though, is Master Smith and I see this constantly in 3 areas. One is the people that we interact that are suffering is they're doing 1 or 2 things a month rather than building the Parthenon. You've got to have 20 things going on all the time. Right? Number 2 is they make a run at people and drop them rather than they're consistent at follow-up. Number 3, they're thinking they need to be constantly and never-endingly focused on getting new people in. And in almost all cases, they have a dropout rate that's double or triple what it should be, right? So and number 4 is their average value per student is way too low. What we want is lifetime value to be in the $6,000, $7,000, even $8,000 range. So if I did 10 enrollments this month, that means I'm going to grow $60,000 or $70,000 because that's what they're going to be worth to me. The second thing we want is we want the dropout rate on a monthly basis to be less than 2%. The lower, the better. But a lot of people are happy with their losing 6% of their student body a month. So in order to maintain 300 active students, they need 18 or 20 enrollments per month. We would need 6 or 5 or 4. That makes all the difference in the world. If I have 300 students and enroll 20 new ones a month, but I'm only losing 2%, that means that every month I'm growing by 14 people, right? So I've got to keep that dropout rate low. But the other element of that's efficiency with your students. The other efficiency is with your prospects. You're much better off to keep reminding people that they were interested, keep educating them on what the value is, and stay at it. So if somebody came into a birthday party in April, or they came in and took an intro in May and didn't enroll, they may be ready to enroll for back to school in August or September. They may be ready to enroll in October. They may be ready to enroll in January. But if we're not in front of them and reminding them of their interest and educating them and piquing their interest and inviting them to events and activities and so forth, I got to tell you, by the time they're ready to do something, let's say it's October, they've forgotten you exist. None of us are so memorable, and the experience was so memorable that when they sit down and say, well, what are we going to do for Billy for something exciting to do this fall? They don't just automatically, spontaneously say, you know, we went to that karate school back in April. That was really cool. We should do that. No, you're the last thing on their radar at that point. There's too many other distractions, too many other things going on, and too many ways that they can forget about and lose track of you.
And the other important thing that they forget is that the key to a successful school is not just enrolling them for a basic program, but it's getting them to black belt. So you have to have a system in place of testing and graduating so they're moving up through the belt levels. You have to become a real legitimate black belt school, not just somebody who teaches somebody for a semester or for a year, but somebody who is working to get their degree, just like going to college. Who goes to college to be a freshman? They go to college to get a degree because they've been educated that way. That's what we have to do in our schools. I see schools that don't have a good renewal upgrade program that teaches them how to get to black belt, and that's going to be even more valuable. You know, an enrollment is worth X amount, but a renewal is going to be worth 6 to 10 times that value because they're going to stay with you longer.
Yeah, which is completely off our subject, so we won't go there anymore. But Matt Smith, you and I have to wrap it up here in about a minute and a half. Any questions before we wrap for the day? Hopefully this has been helpful for everybody. No questions?
Sir. Yes, sir. How are you? Thanks for everything.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I don't know why my pictures and I don't know what's going on, but we're getting a bunch of people getting off from school now for the summer, so we get a lot of calls now about just for summer programs, 6 or 8 weeks or so. I was wondering how you suggest pricing those. Ultimately, we want them to sign up for long-term memberships, not just for the summer. But how would you suggest getting them for 6 to 8 weeks to start off in terms of the price?
Well, Jesse, the short answer is I would only.
Derek, sorry.
That was Derek, sir.
Oh, Derek. I'm sorry, Derek. Derek, the short answer is I would only do any kind of summer offer as an introductory hook to get people to come into the school, and I would always shift them to a regular enrollment in the first couple of lessons.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't want to be enrolling people just for a 6-week thing, and I would never wait for the end of the 6 weeks and then see if I can enroll them from there, because that doesn't work well. Now, when people call in, for me, if people call in and say, I'm looking for something to do for the summer, great. What we do is we start with a couple free introductory classes. It's no charge, no obligation. Gives us a chance. And I go into the normal info call script, schedule them for an introductory class, and then I'm going to try to do just a normal enrollment. That having been said, and I'll say it quickly because we got to run, is there is a place to do a summer offer. And I would normally do a summer offer and think of it in today's terms as like a Groupon offer, is a very inexpensive introductory offer that could be presented maybe as a 6-week inexpensive thing to include the uniform. There is a place for doing that. And especially with that prospect list and so forth, you just have to remember, never, ever, ever throw out an offer like that expecting that they're going to enroll for the summer, just for the summer, and never do an offer like that where, you're thinking you're going to make money from the offer itself, right? You're only making money from them enrolling, not from the rest of the thing.
Master Oliver?
We have some people coming. I'm just sorry, just a quick follow-up, Glenn, 1 second. We just have some kids who are home for college, and so they're not going to be around that much longer after August.
Right.
So that small segment.
You'll have that occasionally, and I mean, if you're charging $200 a month, charge them $200 a month or whatever, right?
Okay.
I spend very little time, Glenn, worrying about that.
Yeah.
I don't particularly want them as a student.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be nice to them, and a little bit of revenue is fine, but it's not your primary thing. I'm always focused on my primary thing is I'm looking for somebody that I'm going to do a trial enrollment and convert them to training to black belt and beyond, and that's what I'm focused on. Everything else, I want them to have a warm feeling about us and all that stuff, but everything else, that's it.
Hey, Master Oliver, do you mind if I jump in for a second?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Glenn Spence. Yeah, I had the same question before, and I'm in a military-laden town, so I've got 5 military bases all within 30 minutes of my location. So and you have a lot of, mixed homes, so you've got divorced families, so the kids travel for the summer. So what I did when people came in, I did like Master Oliver said, I signed them for the summer, but at the full rate, I charge $180 a month, but they had to pay it all up front. None of them have had any problem with that. And I've got return people that had kids here last summer that are visiting them this summer that have signed up. And by the way, now they're doing belt testing. So that's another, income revenue stream as well. Now, granted, that's not the goal, but in my town, it works. I mean, it's working so far. So, I mean.
Glenn, it's working, but it's mostly a distraction. Yeah, I got Chase entertaining us now, Jeff. It's mostly a distraction, and that's fine. The whole test fee thing is a whole different can of worms we won't get into right now. Yeah, exactly. But on that note, Matt Smith, we got to wrap it because you and I both have appointments here.
Okay, we'll continue that thought. Join us next week and bring
for our last summer meeting.
And we'll continue that thought if you'd like.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.